And good evening, welcome to another edition of Life is People. Well, before we go any further, first of all, let me start off by saying that's a stand up and show everybody your t-shirt there, Paul. But before we go any further, how are you doing tonight, Paul, my friend? Fantastic, man.
I hope they're watching.
So last week that was I think the postman basically arriving a couple of days of each other. We both got our Seed and Demons goodies. So well, I mean, that's a really good place to start, man. I mean, I read your review. Obviously, people have done. I mean, just start with that, man. What are your overall thoughts of Neil? Now you've had it a few days and sort of had a play with it.
Well, I sort of had it. I was lucky enough to get an advanced download that the lads sent me, you know, and I thought absolutely brilliant is this. But when you actually, and it really just sort of confirms having a physical CD or a record, you know, how much better it sounds, in my opinion, than listening to digital music. So I've actually been playing the CD this evening in the car, and the sound of it is absolutely fantastic. You know, to me, it just knocks the socks off you know, trying to listen to it through another device. You know, it's just ridiculous to do something like that. So playing the CD, the quality's superb, and the opening track, The Rose, I think it's one of the best opening tracks I've heard for a long time. I said in the review, it reminds me a lot of Johnny Cash's later stuff. Just, you know, just sort of the guitar, and you know, the droll voice, or you know, that's a compliment, not a I want to be, you know, a negative at all. It's a fantastic track to start an album. It's a great album. You know, it's one of those. The more you listen to it, the more you really enjoy it. It's great, really well worth the wait.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to concur you on The Rose, and I think that's for an opening track of an album. And this is just my personal thoughts, and I've said it to the Twins themselves, but the emotion that they convey in those words, and I'm looking forward to seeing it live, because if they can pull that off, what they pull off on that on the actual album, the emotion that they put into that. I mean, I don't know. There's very few songs in my life, Paul, that I hear and actually make the hair stand up on the back of my neck and my arms, and that is one of them. That and I was equally say. Elegy of Neil at the end. I think that's another one that gets my hair sticking up. I can sort of see that being a kind of you know, it almost reminds me of the Shane MacGowan Christmas song. What was that?
Oh yeah, Fairy Tale of New York.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. It's kind of, you can see that song being played in, you know, over Christmas time, and everyone getting very kind of emotional about it. But yeah, that I just think that particularly that was my thoughts. I thought the emotion that they definitely conveyed in his vocals, particularly in you know, like I say, The Rose and Elegy of Neil were particularly, you know, like I say, hairs on the back of your neck.
Yeah, I think they've grown up a lot from the first album, you know, and they're only young lads anyway, you know, but they've matured so much, I think, in 2 albums. I think it's phenomenal what they've done. Really, I mean, I love March Forward. I think that's such a brave track. You know, I remember somebody my age, it reminds me of the old Hovis adverts, you know, but I just think it's absolutely brilliant. It's really, really brave. And I think it shows an incredible maturity for a couple of young lads. I don't know, what are the early 20s, I don't know. It shows an incredible maturity, and also their appreciation of different styles of music. I think it's all sort of gelled together, and it's all sort of coming out now. It's really clicking. You know, when I was a teenager, they used to talk about the difficult second album, you know, and to me, you know, they've absolutely nailed it with this one. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, I completely concur, and I think just on what you just said there, Paul, I think one of the things that's and again, you have to take a step back at times and think, well, they are in their early 20s, because I really, you know, we know what we're all like in our 20s and what we were all like back in the day. So there's, like I say, but what really is in their age. But to me, what was always through the album, always in every song, every track, they're just lyrically spot on. I mean, some of the stuff they talk about, and some of the stuff I think is absolute. I don't hear any other bands talking about it. I mean, some of the stuff they talk, and their range, they're not just talking. Which, to be fair, I think Dual Sides was very much around, you know, as people know, that it was around the suicide and one of their friends. So a lot of that was very emotional, very raw. But this one, they've really opened up their you know, everything, their tentacles in a sense, and they're really exploring different subjects and areas, you know, from monetary debt right through to male suicide, and it shows an incredible breadth of wisdom and maturity for someone like you said, they're in their early 20s, and like you say, knowing, like you say, the age we are, when you think, yeah, there was always the first album was always one that caught people. The second one was a benchmark. The third one was the hardest one, and the fourth one was usually when people dropped off, because if there's ever a band with a fourth album, you're like, well played, you've actually captured the fourth album. So yeah, I mean, their benchmark is incredible for their early 20s. That's the point I'm trying to make.
What they managed to do on Nil is they've you can talk about things like you know, like the bridge to Nil suicide, and it can sound a little bit contrived sometimes, but they've done it in such a sort of a respectful way, if you will. You know, to make you listen to it, but not make it sound as though, you know, you know what I mean? They've absolutely nailed it. I think it's a real triumph, and you know, they should, and I suspect they are, be really proud of themselves, because it's a cracking piece of work. You know, I mean, I marked it 9 out of 10, and you know, I just think it's just brilliant, and I'd love to see it live. I'd love to see them live. I've still never seen them live. Well, not all live, I've seen them live, but I'd love to see them perform this album. I just think it's, I really do think it's a masterful piece of work. But they've just nailed it, like I say, lyrically. They've grown up so much. They tell these stories, you know, particularly the Rosa thing. You know, I mean, if there was ever an introduction to an album as to what was coming, you know, it's just line after line, it's punch after punch, and it's such a powerful track. You know, you almost wonder if the album can get any better after that, but they do manage to maintain it. It is a quite incredible piece of work. I think one of the big things I like about Ceiling Demons is how they've kept their sort of regionalisation. You know, they sort of, if you want to call it rapping, I don't know, in their accent. You know, and again, I made a point to this in the review that they don't try to go sort of all downtown Bronx or anything. You know, they are who they are, and very true to themselves. And I love the accent. I love that they've kept, you know, their identity there as well. You know, they just seem to do everything right. You know, they're, you know, and George as well. You know, let's not forget. You know, they're sort of essentially a trio. I know they've got some extra musicians now, but you know, they're just great. I can't speak highly enough of them. And to boot everything else, you know, they're really lovely lads as well. So it, you know, you wonder what else they could do, don't you? You know, it's a halo over their heads. You know what I mean?
Well, I think you're right there, Paul. I think one of the most refreshing things that and I've said this to them many times before, but from the very first time I saw them, which is a few years back when I saw them at the Brunel Club in Leeds, and when I first saw them, they had, you know, I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 backing musicians behind them, and I was like, this is my very first experience with them. I thought, okay, this is, you know, a big band, you know, quite a big, large band sort of thing. And I've seen them do from that right down to where I've seen both in a tent, you know, just in the middle of a field in Scotland, you know, in a small little tent, just them two with nothing behind them. And that's what I think so refreshing, particularly about the Demons, is that they're very much, and I think you're alluding to it, not only are they open in the sense of what they are, and they're not trying to close down what they are as people, but they're open to, you know, like you said before, open to different styles of music, open to experimentation, open to, that's what I love about them. They're very much an open book. And it's so refreshing you see that, Paul, because I mean, you know, I'm sure you can relate to it, and some of the people you know and your experiences just listening to music. But so many bands become very much ego-driven, and it's all about, no, we like this style and that worked for us, and we're going to keep plowing down that road. And I think it's really refreshing, like you say, from a band, especially in their 20s, where they're very, you know, you can be very headstrong, especially as 2 lads, that you can be very headstrong and say, no, that worked for us, but that openness, like I say, at this stage in their development as a band, like you said, where they're going to go, it's going to be a fascinating journey. And I don't know, I think that's what I'm saying. I personally think that the synergy of where they are, where the album is, and where we are in society generally, I think it's just there. It's just absolutely perfect, and I really do. I think we're given the right wind and the right amount of you know, just backing behind it, momentum behind this could really, really break them through. And I think with it, and this opens up to a wider sort of, you know, sort of issue that, or discussion point, is I think that there's a whole rise of this. I know you mentioned this, you know, there's outside your house and stuff, and I think there's a whole, if one of these bands just lifts, it's going to, I think, going to start a whole new scene that could literally, people in a year's time, people are like, oh, we didn't see that coming, but people like yourselves and you know, people who have known about it and known it's coming for a long time. And it's just about, like I say, whether they can catch that wind and that break, and that comes down to a lot of things. And like any bands, it's having the right exposure at the right time, and ultimately that piece of luck. And we can only hope them and wish them well, but they're doing all the right things. I mean, that's what I'm saying. They're in going down to London this week and doing all the right things. So then it's just like you say, it's just hoping they can catch the right wind and the right break.
Picking up good attention, you know. I mean, you've got sort of someone like Tom Robinson who's a big fan of them. You know, you've got some pretty big publications that are starting to listen out. You know, and I really does hope it happens for them. I mean, the sort of the doubter in you could almost say, well, where do they go from here after making such a good album? But I just don't have any qualms about that at all. You know, I'd be pretty confident that they could repeat it and just better it. You know, because I think there's such clever, talented, level-headed lads. You know, to be easy to make a great album, sort of make a forward after. I just don't feel about that at all. I think it's got strength to strength to strength. And you mentioned Outside Your House as well. You know, I don't know as much about them as I'd like to, but what I have heard from them, again, it's just so off the cuff rap, whatever, you know. It's really sort of bringing a new dimension to that genre, almost creating their own, I suppose. I think the both of them, Outside the House and Ceiling Demons, can sort of fit into that, you know, that sort of same genre. It's like an alternative hip hop, I suppose, alternative rap. I don't know, but it's fascinating, you know. And Outside the House, I noticed you've got an album coming out soon, which I'm really looking forward to, you know. And if either of them are watching, you know, send me a copy, you know, and let's give it a listen, because I've sort of high hopes of that as well. Yeah.
No, and again, Paul, it's you know, we spent maybe 10-15 minutes talking about other people's work, but I mean, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on here, my friend, and you know, obviously since we last spoke, and you had your Equinox out, you know, it's hard, you know, had to be happy when your head's full of sin. Now, again, that was another opus, man. That's something you should be brightly proud of, and it's a really, you know. Now, again, I think it fits into, and I can say this from an outside point of view, it fits into me perspectively into the same sort of what I was just discussing. This whole, there's a new kind of a thing building, and you know, your part, the Equinox was part of that, dude. And that. I don't know how, you know, I don't know if you want to speak about it, but from the outside perspective, it seems to sort of go down well. You seem to, you know, it seems to have good reception from people. So, well, like I said, since we last spoken in public, I mean, sort of give me your, well, I don't know, give me some of your experiences, and you know, how did you, you know, 'cause when we last spoke, you were just on the cusp of putting it out. So talk me through from that moment to this, really. I mean, what your thoughts and experiences of it?
Well, it's something that's sort of gone full circle. From when I was a teenager, you know, I was like a lot of teenagers where, you know, they wanted to be a pop star, etc., etc. You know, I grew up, my sort of big introduction to music, I sort of was really the early 80s. You know, we had all the sort of synth bands and new romantic stuff, and for pop music, the early 80s for me was just absolutely untouchable. And I don't think there's been anything so major in music since the early 80s, personally. You know, where you can look at the charts and you'd sort of see, you know, you can look at the charts now from the 80s and you see classic after classic after classic week in, week out for sort of 3 or 4 years. And I don't think there's been anything like that since. So, you know, I wanted to be a pop star when I was a teenager. I realised I couldn't sing and I couldn't play any musical instruments. So that sort of went by and by. And any sort of songs that I'd tried to write, I thought, well, you know, let's just sort of turn them into poetry. So, teenager about 18, 19, I sort of started writing poetry. Had a break for a few years and picked up again maybe about 3-4 years ago. And I thought, you know, I've tried before to get stuff published, but I thought, well, at my age, you know, I was sort of in the late 40s, let's give it another go. And I was lucky enough to pick up a publishing deal for a book of poems, and it's been more of a sort of a personal goal, I think, rather than, you know, wanting to sell millions of copies. But I sort of had that out, you know, about July last year, probably, when we spoke. And then a friend of mine, I'm quite friendly with a band called Radio Europa, who does some incredible music. People should look if they've never heard them. Experimental, I don't know, experimental synth, a bit of sort of a bit of wire, a bit of coil, a bit of all sorts of really, really very adventurous but incredibly clever music. And they asked if I'd like to recite one of my poems for them to put music to. So I thought that sounds a good idea. You know, I'll do it. We did this track. It was a poem of mine called Josephine. And it sounded quite good on the album. And it actually got picked out from the album as a track that a few people played on sort of a, you know, local radio station. So after that, I thought, well, why not give it a go myself? You know, why not try and do something? But so we were originally going to do quite a few tracks together, myself and Radio Europa. But the bizarrest thing happened, and I sort of mentioned pop music in the early 80s for a reason. One of my, I don't really like to call heroes, I'm not so much into hero worship, but one of the people I really, really admire is Vince Clarke, Erasure as a Depeche Mode. I think he's a genius in terms of pop music. And I subscribed to the Erasure newsletter every week, got one through. He was just developing his record label. And I can't really remember how it came about, but I sort of somehow asked if I could review this album that was coming out, and the information service must have obviously sent it to Vince Clarke. And within a couple of hours, I'd had an email off Vince Clarke, which sort of knocked me completely sideways to start. You know, and I sort of seized the opportunity. And I said, you know, if I send you a poem, would you put some music to it? Just on the sort of premise that if, you know, what's the worst it can say? It can say no. And he came back and said yes. So it was the most sort of, it was the bizarrest, surreal thing. You know, and I sort of recited this poem, and he did one version, a poem called Good Night Vienna. It's quite a dark poem about finding a friend on the settee that's committed suicide. But he sent it back with some music. Absolutely amazing what he'd done with it. Really atmospheric. And did a second version, which he said he tweaked. And blow me if I could find the differences, but there was something there that Vince sort of wanted to change. So I thought, well, let's give this a go. So I got in touch with lots of other artists that I'd got to know through writing and reviewing. And before you knew it, you know, this album had come along, 14 tracks, 14 artists. A real collective feel to it, you know, all just sort of getting together, throwing in your talents, and you know, let's see what comes up. And because you've got 14 different artists, you've got 14 quite different sounding tracks. One of them, luckily enough, was Singling Demons. And so yeah, it's something I'm proud of. We've sold a few copies. I'd like to sell a lot more. I'd like somebody to play it on the radio. You know, I'd love somebody. You know, I'd love a major station to play it. Just the ones, you know, that really make it for me. But it's funny, the last few days I've been thinking, you know, should we sort of do a second one at some point? So it's something that's sort of wearing around in my head at the moment. And I've actually got 3 artists who are interested in helping out already. So you never know, we might do a second one. But no, I'm very, very pleased with it. If I can give a shameless plug, it's still available on Bandcamp. And it's under the moniker of Sounds of Equinox. With a few CDs left, and I do mean a few, maybe about 10 CDs left. And you can buy the download just for £2. So there's no excuse for people not to have a double. That's my shameless plug. But I'm really pleased with it. It's been an ambition that's taken a long, long time to come through, and it's a good feeling. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the first questions that I think leads really from the whole experience of you making that the Equinox, what you just described then, is would at any point, or have you thought about it or contemplated at any point in the future going out and doing this live, if it actually went to that kind of like you say, so let's take an example, you get some radio, it's you know, bubbling away quite nicely. Would there ever be a point when you contemplated actually taking this out and doing some live shows with it?
somebody's mentioned it. In fact, one of the groups has mentioned it, one of the acts, and it scares the living daylights out of me. I must admit. I'm quite a socially inadequate person, so the thought of sort of getting on stage and first of all trying to remember my words, which I think would be the first thing, that you know, standing in front of anybody that sort of that wants to listen, it fills me with complete dread. But at the same time, it's an interesting thought. It's interesting. I keep waiting for Jules Holland to sort of drop me a line. Invite me and Feral 5 on to perform, but we'll see. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how logistically it would work. You know, 14 different artists that contributed tracks. You know, would I just stand there in front of recordings? You know, I don't know. It'd take a lot of thought, I think, to sort of take it anywhere. But we'll see. Maybe if people buy a lot more of the album, they'll think about it.
No, I think it's really. I'm so glad you said that answer, Paul, because I think that's it kind of like I find it a dividing line between many creative people. There's those who have no fear at all about jumping onto a stage and having that whole, you know, eyeballs staring at them, and there's some people like myself who just absolute dread. I can't. And people say to me, I can't. Well, what is it? It's just something innate. Maybe it's just the. You know, I think it is in there. I think this is where me and you can understand that duality. It's the thing about being a writer. When you're a writer, it's a very isolating thing. When you're sitting like I do and write and you paint, like you said, like yourself, it's a very, you're by yourself all the time, and you almost become like a hermit. So the idea of taking that and then going out in front of I don't know 10 people, that's what always fears me a dread. I always sort of thought I'd probably have less fear about going and playing, I don't know, Leeds Arena or, you know, Wembley Stadium, because it would just be a sea of people. But from my experience of playing the band in the 90s, playing in front of 10 people or 20 people, especially if like half of them are people you know, it's the worst thing in the world, my friend. And I kind of thought, I don't know how anyone, I said to any bands, I don't know how you do it. I don't know. I mean, I always tip my hat to them and say, better person than you, because I'm exactly the same as you, man.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Well, on the other one with Equinox, again, this is something that fascinates me, man. And this is something from, you know, I've had a bit of experience in, but I'm absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this. Obviously, you did 14 tracks on that, so there's two questions I really want to kind of, you know, sort of focus on. Really, was one, how did you get to the process of ordering the tracks? I'm always fascinated with this, because I think even the art of listening to an album from beginning to end has almost been lost in this world right now, where people are picking up instant tracks and they want instant little, and then the art of listening to an album as the artist or the musician has actually laid the whole thing out wasn't, like you said, that was an art of the 80s. That's why I look forward to hearing albums like, okay, this is the narrative of the album. So on that one, how long did you spend around trying to mold the tracks and design, you know, what the arc of the album was? Or wasn't it like that? It's just a case of that goes there, just in the order they were made. I mean, how did that process work?
It was quite interesting, because obviously the tracks sort of came back to me over a period of probably about 4 months altogether. And for instance, the last track of the album, Belief, which is with a guy called Will Harris, who's the leader of a superb group from Cumbria called My Little Brother. But the first time I heard that, I thought the album, and straight away that was going to be the last track of the album, no matter what came along. It was just perfect. And a few tracks sort of came along that sort of just seemed to fit in later in the album, earlier in the album. But I did Kiss with Feral 5, which is an incredible track, and I wanted that to be sort of quite near the front, just have that immediate impact. And for a while, I thought of having it as the starting track. But there's a track I did with a guy, I'm going to use this term a lot, an incredible artist, Ashley Reeves, very, very talented man. But he did Help Me Please, almost an ambient backing to it, but it was more the words that sort of positioned it where it was. Ashley's backing was perfectly suited, but the words, even though they are sort of sort of endorsing my sort of non-believer and non-religious point of view. It was also sort of a case of sort of laying everything out and, you know, this is going to be my life, you know, for the next 40 minutes, help me, you know, this is what it is. And I think because a lot of the poems, a lot of the tracks on the album are influenced or based around depression and the like, it seemed a sort of quite a fitting organ, so it just sort of laid everything out. But then what I tried to do after that was sort of, maybe predictably, but sort of, you know, have a slow track and a faster track and a slow track and a faster track. But when I listened to the album, you know, the rough sort of running order of it, it just seemed to sort of tell the story. Maybe a little bit by chance the way I'd done it. And it just seemed to sort of stick. It was almost one of those, you know, was it fate? Was it just sort of meant to just fall into place like that? And it was really a lot easier than I thought, to be honest with you. It just seemed to happen. You know, once I had the first couple of tracks and the last track, it just seemed to slot. You know, I removed a couple of ones near the end, but it just seemed to slot into place and almost sort of tell a story in a way which hopefully comes across, you know, when you listen to it.
Okay, perfect. So I mean that's really refreshing to hear, actually, Paul, because you know, the idea of I listened to many albums. I'm sure you're the same. You think they've all been slapdash put together. So to actually hear there's some thought being put into it is actually really refreshing. And the second one I was going to get to, and again, this is a really kind of something. Again, I maybe as a writer, as people who I've written a couple of songs and stuff in the past, and I think it's something that sometimes that I found through this process, it becomes really naturally, or something I really struggle with. And the question I'm going to ask you is, how do you go about naming the tracks? Actually, you know, putting a name to them. I mean, is that something you pull from the lyrics that come out, or because it's something that I know I've wrestled with at times. Trying to do a name for a track is this most. It sometimes can be really it's like wrestling. I don't know. You're trying to catch a wind in your hand or something. It's really, really difficult. So how do you go around that process?
Again, that can vary. I do sometimes pull a word or a lyric from the poem and name it that, but sometimes it's very sort of anti-songwriting in a word. I'll sort of call it something that doesn't get mentioned anywhere in the poem. Good Night Vienna is one, you know, Vince Clarke. It doesn't mention Good Night Vienna anywhere. But Good Night Vienna, I chose that. I don't know, maybe a bit tongue in cheek. I don't know, you know, somebody had taken their life and it was a case of, you know, right, that's it, lights out, you know, Good Night Vienna. So it can vary. I was going to say I do try and pull a word or words from something, but I don't. It's just, I don't know. Sometimes you're left with something and you really don't know what to call it, which maybe then is when you pull something from the lyric. But I don't know. It can vary. It can be a feel. It can be another word. It can maybe just be an influence behind it. I'm just have a quick look now, and I think probably almost all of them on. I don't know. Maybe the exception of 2 or 3 on the album are all sort of from the lyric, and another ones are sort of based around the story of it, I suppose, or the feel of it. So there's no half-fast sort of route to take, and I like that fluidity as well. You know, rather sort of just having a formula. It's nice to sort of shoot from the hip a bit sometimes.
Okay, maybe a continuation from this, and you know, when on the actual process of and again, this widens this out into writing, not only just songwriting, maybe into poems and any kind of writing. What's your process with editing? Now, I gave you an example. It wasn't something I had to learn the skill of editing, because if you look back at anything I wrote when I was in my 20s, it was just I just almost just rambled. It was just, and I've learned older as I got just to cut and cut and cut and cut and cut. So the actual process when you're constructing something. For instance, would the very first draft you'll make of any poem compared to the one you're maybe that's in the final draft, how much editing will go on, or is it very much on? Because and again, the duality of that is I've had times when I've just written something and it's just been like, no, I can't do anything with that. That is word for word perfect. And so, I mean, again, is that sort of a commonality you find, and what's your process on that?
Yeah, it's very rare that I've changed anything drastically. I mean, I maybe read through something I've finished and maybe change the odd word or change a phrase or something. It's very rare that I sort of write something off completely. Or make big changes, because I think once you get into writing something, it does become very fluid, and it's your emotions that you're putting down onto paper. So, I mean, I wrote one poem which I would love to record and make into a track called Lament, and it's quite a sort of a long, rambling almost poem. But I wrote it, and I swear, as soon as I finished it, within a minute of finishing writing it, I actually couldn't remember writing it, and I still can't now. It was almost as though, I don't know, it sounds really, really weird, but it's almost as though something sort of took over and just sort of wrote its own life. And I honestly, I can't remember writing it. I'm pretty sure I did, but I just can't remember writing it at all. And it's when you do something like that that you know that you just shouldn't change it at all. So yeah, I think it's very rare that I'm making sweeping changes to anything. Maybe they'll tweak here and there, but nothing drastic.
Well, my friend, I don't even think the word weird is appropriate. I think what you just described there is the very essence of creativity, my friend. And I think that's that very moment. And this is you could start off a whole discussion on this one, because I think this is fascinating. I mean, I spent a long time just trying to, in my own life, basically thinking, okay, what are I'll take us a step back. I completely concur with you. And I've had many paintings, I've had many pieces of work that literally just been people literally plucked out of the air. I mean, it's almost been a conduit for this stuff, and I don't know where it comes from. And one of the disciplines I think that many creative people have to, I personally had to learn is, okay, because at times you can have that moment, and then other times it's not there, and you think, okay, and you're always trying to search that island of where you were in the moment. And it's almost, I think, some of the disciplines that you talk about, it's not weird, it's understanding what creativity is. And then I think half the things you can do as a creative person is to basically focus on the things that make you get to that moment, and stay away from the things that don't. For instance, for me, I find that to get into that creative state or flow, whatever you want to call it, I go for walks. I find that going for a walk gets your mind into a whole rhythmic pattern, and then I find I can just come home naturally and create. Now, again, you are just waiting for that, for want of a better word, that muse, that thing to happen. But you can do a lot to get yourself into a great sort of state of mind. And I think that's a lot of the path. And I think, again, to be honest, I think it's a hidden path, and it's something that's not discussed amongst many creative people. And that's why I think many creative people, and I get really quite serious on this book, that's why I know many creative people I've known who are now in graves because they've tried to chase it at the end of a heroin, or they try to chase it at the end of cocaine, or they try to chase it at the end of a bottle of beer or a bottle of whiskey, thinking that was the answer. And how many people, not only people I know personally, but we all know personal musicians and creative people who've all chased that, trying to find that elixir moment where that creativity came, and think it was in the end of a bottom of a bottle of whiskey, when it's not. And that's, again, these are the hard truths. I mean, this is the whole thing about, how many more Amy Winehouses are we going to have before we actually say we can't just have this as a rock and roll lifestyle anymore. We've got to look after these people and be true with it. And that's why, dude, I think it's very appropriate that you spoke upon it, because I think these are the things that need to be spoken about, especially by creative people, because we never asked these things. Everyone just assumes that these things just appear, and that we're just some sort of magical conduits. No, there's a lot of personal discipline in this. There's an art in it, and people, it's this thing I don't think many people from the outside understand, that everything you're doing, and if I was to come catch you, I don't know, maybe 5 hours later, you're sitting there, even if you're just sitting in your chair doing nothing, and it's like, oh, what's he doing? That's all part of the process. And these are the things that aren't really sort of spoken upon in this world, where everything is just like, well, everything just happens magically. This is all magic, and you get to become a superstar just by how magic you look and how great you can talk, and it's not that's not the truth. The hard reality is, and the real reality is, it's everything is that bit by bit by bit process. And the hard bit about creative process, the thing is, like I say, trying to find the things where you can be in that state of mind, that creative flow, like you spoke upon.
I mean, I'm not one for sort of sitting down and saying, right, I'm going to write a poem. I can't do that. it has to be something that just happens. You know, and there's been many times where I've maybe had 1 or 2 lines written down for years before I've used them. You know, I have a few now that I've had for years and years, and so I've not put them into a poem, and it's just waiting for that right moment for them to fit in somewhere. You know, when you do hear of bands, you know, when they make an album, for instance, you know, went into the studio to write an album, and I can't get my head around that. I can't see how somebody can just go in and, you know, in a couple of weeks they've written, you know, it might be great tracks, you know, they might have a real knack or a talent for doing it, but I just can't see how people can do that. You know, to me, it's got to be something that has to be built up over a long, long time. For instance, you know, sort of going back to the book, you know, I started writing poetry when I was 19. You know, it was almost 30 years later before it was together as a publication, before I had, you know, enough poems that I thought were good enough, or the confidence to put together these poems in a book, you know. So it's not, it's got to be fluid to me. It's got to be, you know, oh, I've got all this in my head, you know, write it down, you know. It can't be, right, I'm going to go home tonight and write a poem. It just doesn't work for me. And it's a good tonic as well as writing, I find. You know, as I said, somebody like me that's very socially inadequate, finds it very difficult talking to people. Ironically, something like this really doesn't seem to bother me. You know, face to face with people in the flesh, you know, is difficult, but writing things down, and it's probably where something like social media helps as well. You know, you can communicate with people without sort of, you know, communicating in the conventional sense. So I'd say writing things down is a good tonic. It's a good way of expressing feelings. It works for me most of the time. But yeah, I'm not one that can just sit down and write away. It's got to be something that's as a consequence, you know, it might be 12 months. You know, it's happened in the past. It might be 12 months before I write a poem. You know, that's happened in the past. But that's sort of a consequence of the way I do it. You know, the way I'm comfortable. And by the same token, there have been times where, you know, I've maybe written 3 poems in an hour. You know what I mean? It can just come and then it can just disappear again. So yeah, it's just something. It's just got to come naturally. It's that creative thing. It's just got to be. You can just let it come. When it comes, it comes.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, my friend. And that's exactly it. It's that not stressing. That's the point I was trying to make in maybe a very rambled way. But it's learning not to stress with the fact of, like, it's not always going to be there. You just got to go with the flow. It's that be water, my friend, analogy, dude. And then something else again. And something I wanted to pick up, because you mentioned, you know, I mean, you're just speaking then about how you're writing things down. You're writing things down. Now, is that an actual sense of actually pen on paper, or is that writing sense down on laptop, or do you have a mixture of both? Because I'm fascinated with this, because I'm still old school. I still have books and iPads and everywhere, and I try to keep that old school. And I say old school because it seems to be. I mean, I was reading an article this week, and they were saying that people postcards. I mean, I was reading today that postcards they're stopping postcards because nobody's writing anymore. So do you actually do it? Yeah. Do you actually do, you know, when you're saying writing, do you actually mean old school, old fashioned like we are? We've had them, you know, actually on, you know, ink on paper, or are you talking about laptop?
I do. It tends to be a bit of a mix. I mean, I have a nice little book that my wife bought me, sort of leather bound with like a little strap around it, you know, and parchmenty paper, which I sort of use. But one of the, and I do use pen and paper a lot. I do occasionally use a laptop. I suppose it's a good thing of having a mobile phone. You know, you can make notes on a mobile phone, and you know there are a couple of lines on the phone that are sort of stored away. So it's a mixture. You know, I mean, it's technology. You know, it's the future. It's progress, I suppose. But in the same way, to me, you can't beat, you know, picking up a book and, you know, and having a book in your, like this one, having a book in your hand. In the same way that you can't beat having a book in your hand. I don't understand Kindles. I don't understand people that want to read a book on a device. It just doesn't go in. To me, there's only one way of reading it, that's the book. And I'm very much the same with music. I have a couple of young children, so playing with vinyls isn't really an option at the moment. You know, I must admit I do like compact discs, but MP3s just isn't. You know, I don't understand people that buy MP3s, because to me you're sort of not getting anything in a way. You know, it's sort of a cheap way out. I like to have something physical there. So yeah, going back to your question, it's a mix of all sorts really. You know, I've got a few lines up in the ether, and I've got a couple on the floor, and you know, and I do more often than not have a bit of paper and a pen handy, you know. So it's of all sorts. You know, I'm mixing the conventional with trying to keep up with technology. You know, fairly miserably.
The reason, I think one of the fascinating things that this is one of the reasons I thought I wanted to sort of bring this out really, was because one of the things I think it's almost the old analogy about, you know, as we progress into the future, we have that tendency just to throw the baby out of the bathwater. And one of the things that I noticed, that keeping the idea of pen, you know, ink on paper, it starts when you're writing, your mind will, it's for one way, a better doodle, and before you know it, you start having images. That's one of the reasons I got into art, really, because it was kind of like at school, got bored, and you started doing little things, and you go, oh, okay. And it's use of the hand-eye coordination, and which you don't get when I'm exactly the same, dude. I can sit and write, you know. And I think, actually, to be honest, I find laptops very easy to do, because you get into a flow and you just, which again, isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing, man? From someone who's a bit of a sidetrack, but someone from our age, it's like, I remember when I was at school, man, typing was sort of like a deemed job for females, that, you know, they had to go and, you know, like, oh, I can do 100 words a minute, and it's like, and now we can all do it. I remember when I was 16, it was like, that's impossible to do. So anyway, the point, that was a diversion, but the point I'm making is, when you are doing stuff on a laptop, it's a different skill. Your hands, and I think in some ways it restricts your mind. It's good at focusing, because you're focused on the keys. But when you're writing with hand, it's almost like you get into a different state, and you can flow off, and you're doing doodles. And I don't know. I know it's a really kind of nuancy point about the element of creating, but I do found that. So my question to you would be, I mean, have you ever explored into the artwork? I mean, I meet a lot of writers and musicians, and they're like, oh, I can't do artwork. And I think, well, come on, man, if you can do music and you can do writing, then it's not that big a jump to artwork. So have you ever explored doing that? And that's what I'm saying. Because I think the point I'm trying to make, that really does come from doodling, and which is the ink on paper one.
Yeah, I did. Again, I used to draw a lot. And it's a shame I didn't watch. I could maybe have had a few handy, but no, I enjoy drawing, sketching. Did a lot, as I say, when I was younger. I mean, you can do some fantastic things on laptops. You know, you see people that sort of do artworks on laptops, and you know, and fair enough, you know, it's a clever thing and it's impressive. But you know, again, you can't beat somebody, you know, drawing or painting on paper or on canvas or whatever. You know, it's something I did a lot of when I was younger. Interestingly, my son designed the cover for my book, and also did a couple of sketches on the Oil album as well. He's 18, he was 17 when he did it. So I'm a big fan of art. You know, maybe embarrassingly in front of you, I'm a big fan of your work as well. You know, I think what you do is brilliant. You know, and I think, again, it's I don't know. It's a very organic skill to be able to paint and draw and sketch or whatever. But it's something I do a lot of, and you know, I do still do the odd sketch now. I think I'm okay to, you know, I get by. But I think it's maybe that whole creative thing, perhaps. So, like I say, maybe it's all come together. You know, the drawing, the sketching, the poetry. You know, luckily enough now to sort of have some sort of musical input, and I suppose it's that whole creative bundle in a way that maybe a lot of people, if you sort of have one, you dabble in the other ones as well. You know, and that sort of creative streak some people have.
Yeah, you're right, my man. And I don't know, it's always been an absolute vein of my life and a frustration of my life when people go to me, what do you do? But that question alone, what do you do? Like, okay, I'm in a box, but then they go, okay, well, you know, I'm a creator. And they go, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, exactly it. Like you just said, you don't. you don't box yourself in. I mean, I think it goes back to the very point you're making, because, and I'm sure you can allude to this, and I'm sure you'll have the exact same experience. One moment you can be in a very much your writing mode. The next thing you're in a music mode. The next thing you're not in anything at all. The next thing you know, you're in an art one. This is the whole. I think this whole boxing people into that you're a musician, you're a writer, you're a poet, you're this, and I think that's just old school mentality that I think those labels are just ridiculously redundant from a bygone age. And I think, like you just said, the creative urge is the creative urge, and wherever it comes out. And that's why I was fascinated about, particularly I find, frustrating when I meet creative people, musicians, say, because I was told at school I wasn't very good at art, so I'm not very good. And I think, oh man, you need to get over that, because I think they're all complementary skills that help you all over. I think, I think they're all, like you said, once you're in that flow moment, don't hold yourself back. If you feel yourself sketch. If you feel you want to go and play a piano or a piece of guitar, go and play it. Don't limit yourself. Be boundless in that sense. And I think you're actually right in picking up on that, because it's that, like I said, it's always been a vein in my life, that question, what do you do?
Yeah, but I mean, it's imagination, isn't it? It's letting you sort of, again, letting something from inside you come out, and sometimes the smallest things can make the biggest difference. I tell this a lot. When I was at school, when I was in high school, I think it was in an exam, and one lad drew a picture of an orange, which doesn't sound particularly, amazing, but he drew it on blue paper, and it just looked amazing. An orange. You could tell it was an orange because it was on blue paper. But it almost sort of played with your mind, but that sort of creative thing, and that little bit of being different, made something that was potentially, an orange into, wow, it's an orange. It's and sometimes those little things make all the difference, don't they? It's just that sort of creative thing, just that little spark sometimes. Set something aside.
Well, you're absolutely right, man. And I think the perfect example of that, and we haven't really sort of touched upon, I don't have to, but that was a perfect example of AIDS. That's exactly what you just said, man. I mean, I read the book, got inspired by it, thought that would be perfect on that, and ultimately, it's just for that reason. Do you know what? I think it's half the thing, and I think you spoke upon it when we started this conversation, but one of the things I think that's almost lost in this world we live in right now is the idea everything you have to do has to be instant success. It has to get you. No, half the thing about, and this is what I loved about it, and AIDS was a perfect example. We didn't know each other. We met each other through this form. Out of something you wrote, and out of something that never happened, out came something new completely. Whether it's just enjoyed by one person or by 10 people or by 100,000 people, that's not the issue. It's the fact that out of something came, out of nothing came something, and that's just, when you really, I don't know. At times I was doing this today to stop and think about how absolutely amazing that is, that us as humans can manifest an intent and we can connect with each other. This is flesh and bones that we are, this meat machine, that we've got the ability to reach out, connect, and create. That is, I think sometimes, we can take all this for granted too much in life. We can get very much depressed about what's going on with North Korea and Trump, and what's going on with the right, all this. That when you actually sort of take a step back and think, wow, isn't it just amazing that we can, us as human beings can do this and inspire each other and create. It's just such a, I don't know, it's the whole thing about sometimes you just step back and take it and smell the flowers, man. I think that's something.
Well, in a way, it's sort of like the big thing about the album that I made. I was recording poems of my choice and sending them to artists for them just to interpret and put music to. And it's like you said, the thing that you and me did with AIDS, you have no idea how the recording of the voice is going to sound. I had no idea what sort of music was going to come back. There were maybe a couple of choices of artists on there that, I'll be honest, I was sending stuff away and I was thinking, how's this going to work? The way they sort of, I'm thinking one, there's an act who I'm proud to say I championed since the first album was released. It's a duo called De Furiosa, and they're like sort of a post-punk act. Absolutely amazing. I gave their album 10 out of 10 when I reviewed it for absolutely knockout album. But I sent them a sort of appointment, and I thought, well, how is this punk duo going to come back with one of the poems? And they sort of put my voice on loop, you know, and the vocalist sort of sang, and it just came back amazing. And it's just one of those things. It's like saying, you know, you've got sort of two sparks almost that come together in your mind, and you know, neither of you know really how, you know, how it's going to start, how it's going to end. But you know, every track on there was like that. You know, I had no idea what was going to come back. You know, I didn't sort of tell anybody I want you to do this one time, because I think that would have, you know, contrived it a little bit. You know, and even some suggestions that I did make. One of them was Sealing Demons. They came back and said, we don't think that'll work, and they were spot on. You know, it didn't work. So it's that, you know, that combination, that spark, that coming together, not knowing what's going to happen. You know, it makes it really quite something, I think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't actually want to go into that, but man, you can't just leave it at that. I mean, what did they feel wasn't going to work?
Well, I wanted to do something that it was maybe a bit predictable. I was maybe, they did sort of quite an ambient piece to the poem, and I think I was maybe expecting something maybe a bit with a drum beat, and I had this really, and I think about it now, and it's really an awful idea. But I thought, you know, can we at the end have something like a scratch record on there, you know? And George from the Demons just sort of said it's not going to work, you know. You know, I think you should do it like this, and it's spot on, you know. I don't think it would have worked at all. So thankfully they sort of shelved that idea, and I think what came out was a brilliant piece. You know, it's only about a minute long, but it's just perfect. And, it's one of the few sort of suggestions I did make. And it probably showed by some good experience of music as well, I think, you know, just hoping somebody else gets it right on my behalf, and they did do it.
I mean, exactly, man. Well, obviously, you know, we have to sort of mention other sort of things you're working on. Again, I just wanted to know, really, generally, what I mean. Obviously, you've done the Equinox now. This was the last time we had a conversation in public, and you obviously got that out now. What's your sort of, yeah, have you got any plans in the works at the moment? Any sort of thing bubbling up? What you're working on, or?
Well, there's a track that we did with Feral 5 called Kiss, which we're sort of still trying to push, because I think as a commercial piece of work, I think it's got some legs, and I think it could potentially sort of have something, you know, in terms of sort of trying to get some airplay. And there's another track as well that, you know, I sort of maybe like to have a go with after that. But it'd be nice to do another album. Like I said earlier, I've got 3 artists who have expressed interest in sort of helping. I've got a few ideas sort of circulating, but I don't want to sort of give up on this album just yet. Say give up sounds very negative, but I don't want to sort of put this one to bed just yet. You know, I think it's still some legs, and I think you know, there's still potential with it. But I might do another. There should be an EP coming out in November, I think, just 4 tracks, which I did with another very talented artist. He's currently under the name of China, but he was called Polko before then. We've done a 4-track EP together. Very short tracks. Same thing. I've done the words, he's done the music, and that'll come out in November. And it may well come out as just a sort of a free download, you know, just as a sort of to get it out there, sort of thing. But yeah, possibly another album. We'll see. It was quite stressful, but I'll see where it goes.
Well, being quite stressful is the I think kind of the theme of this very conversation tonight, my man. That's I think it's the element of being alive, my man. You know what I mean? The stress point. I mean, you know, I was kind of reminded it, you know, this last week, really thinking we're going to be a long time dead, man. So, you know, any stress we might have right now, you know, we'll bring it on, because when you're sitting there and you're incontinent in that bed before you die, you're like, you know, I mean, I was reading a fascinating, it was a great quote. And I was, Victoria said, Queen Victoria said on her deathbed, she said, in that moment, she said, all my possessions for one more moment. And it's true. It doesn't matter if you're the Queen of England with the biggest empire in the world. You'll give it all away for that one extra moment. So, so really, should any of us be complaining on anything in our lives, dude? I wanted to finish off, and I again, because it's I think it's appropriate after we've been speaking a lot of time about. We've been talking about the Equinox album, and I wanted to play. Well, for two reasons. One, because it's I don't know, it means a lot to me, this track, and it's kind of one of my favourites on the whole album. But secondly, again, I love it because it's a really long track, and I particularly like long tracks. So I'm going to finish with Gone. So while I'm queuing this up, before I sort of do finish this, I want to thank you for giving me your time tonight, Paul, because we know how busy we all of us are. So I want to thank you for that. And again, well, before you do wrap this up, let people know where they can find you, where they can reach out to you and do that. And again, while I'm queuing up, just give us a bit of a background really behind Gone. What are the inspirations behind it? What anything you may know about it. And again, thank you for your time tonight, Paul. We'll like I say, while you're doing that, I'll queue it up and we'll play it.
No problem. Well, Gone was sometimes when I write a poem, I can be influenced by anything. It might be a lyric from somebody else's song. Don't tell anybody who it was. It might be a scene in a TV program. It might be a film. But there's an artist that I like a lot in Australia called Rob Duggan, and he did a track about somebody being shot, and I sort of love the sort of feel of it, and I tried to sort of encapsulate the feeling of the writer holding a gun to somebody's head, literally, and sort of going through the sort of feeling of the power, I suppose, holding a gun there, seeing somebody in fear and seeing somebody panic, and sort of then fighting with yourself as to do I pull the trigger, don't pull the trigger, don't pull the trigger. It's the first poem in the book, and again, I've sort of been criticised for putting something sort of dark and violent, I suppose, in a way, as it was for me the book, but I felt it needed to be there really just to sort of let people know what they're in for. But I got an amazing act, Superhand, a couple of the most talented, interesting, original people I've ever come across, Mark and Jess. And again, talk about albums, about 3 years ago, on American Active, absolutely incredible album if nobody's checked it out. But the sort of quite anti-music in a way. And they asked if they could pull the words apart and put them back together again. And I said, we can sort of do whatever you want, And they came back with this really atmospheric, experimental, ambient, whatever you want to call it. The words are sort of quite subdued, but it's brilliant. If you can give yourself the sort of whatever it is, 6 or 7 minutes to listen to it. They said to me, "Do you want a shorter version for that?" I said, "No, keep it the way it is. Don't edit something like that. It's in its purest thing. In the way it was meant to be. So yeah, it's there. It's a long track. Some people will hate it. I love it. I think, as like I say, they're an amazingly talented act. If nobody's heard of Superhand, they really should check them out. So yeah, I'm glad you played it. I think that one because it's probably one of the more unusual ones, and probably the ones that people maybe won't pick. So it's cool to pick that one. Yeah. See life pulsing on your temple, beads of sweat on your forehead. I salivate. Sweat on my palms, and our heart beats fast. Faster, so fast. Faster, so fast. I tighten my grip, but this weapon in my life. My throat pounds, my finger twitches. I tighten my grip, but this weapon in my life. You wince, you squeal, my finger twitching. Trigger, motionless, you flow.